The murder trial for football icon Senzo Meyiwa will resume on Monday. The case was postponed earlier after a state witness and South African police officer, forensic officer Thabo Musia, told the High Court in Pretoria that he was not feeling well. Musia was being grilled by the defense over the collection of evidence at the murder scene. He conceded that he did not test witnesses for gunshot residue. eNCA reporter Slindelo Masikane, following this trial inside court, she's joining us now live from inside those chambers as she gives us an update this hour. Slindelo, good afternoon and thank you very much for your time. Talk to us about the submission made by the defense for 4 of the accused. That's Advocate Malisela Defo. That was the beginning of the proceedings today.
Yeah, we were all expecting that we'd get straight into cross-examination, Bradan, but before we could begin with that, Advocate Malisela Defo stood up to say that he had some submissions to make, in fact, demanding a trial within a trial. He says that his clients have been prejudiced in terms of the fact that at the very beginning of this matter, when they first appeared in the Boksburg Magistrates Court, they did not have their rights read to them, saying that that this entire process is essentially flawed from the very beginning. But also adding to that, he said that the cross-examination of Sergeant Thabo Musia would be a futile exercise in terms of continuing, saying that there's a possibility that the state is going to be using confessions from accused 1 and 2 in their submissions. But the judge, as well as the defense, in terms of Advocate Slindelo Masikane, were quite confused because it wasn't really a formal application in terms of requesting that trial within a trial. He was just merely making these submissions with no papers that have been filed. So Advocate Mshololo then requested protection from the court, saying that she wants to continue with cross-examination and that it was unfair that Defo at this point was disrupting and interrupting that particular process. So let's just take a listen to this exchange between Advocate Defo as well as the judge.
Also cannot be party to a procedure where I hear about a confession that will be used from a defense counsel, because the state must state its intention to use that confession. Whoever is affected will accordingly, in accordance with the procedures that we use in courts of law, will respond. And then if everybody has said their say around the confessions and they've argued the way a trial within a trial is conducted, then I will make my ruling. But now you're pushing me into something I don't know. I must repeat, I don't know. Even after you have reasoned and spoken about it, I don't know it.
You don't know, Your Lordship. I'm aware. That's why I'm standing here.
Yeah.
And I'm introducing
so
this. And can the Lordship give me the opportunity to speak, please?
Yes.
To address this court?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, it's not safe to argue between you and me. And I didn't invite the argument. I just wanted to make a submission. That's why I've requested my colleague to say.
Finish yes. What you want to say.
Yeah, and it should be not that I should not be expedited. Yeah. This is very important for my client, and I have to do my best to defend my client.
You are not going to tell me how to run my trial, Advocate Defo. You are not going to tell me how to run this trial. The tail in this instance shall not wag the dog in my name.
It's not what I'm doing to tell the court how to run the proceedings.
Yeah,
what I'm saying.
Finish your argument, so that we give others the chance to respond.
Very tense exchange there earlier on, the Slindelo in court between the judge and Mr. Defo. Now, the advocate, Zandile Mshololo, who's now standing in there representing accused number 5, does she agree with Defo on this?
Not at this point. In fact, it seems she took offence, Bradan, in terms of the submissions that were made by Defo, saying that saying that he doesn't understand why Mshololo would want to continue with cross-examination given his submissions, and she was saying to the court that she doesn't appreciate Defo trying to tell her how to do her job. Let's take a listen.
With due respect, my lord, to my learned friend, I've never heard, my lord, wherein the defense has to tell the state what to do. We will wait for the state, and the state is the dominus litis, and the state is the one that is going to make submissions before this court regarding the statements and the evidence that the state wishes to make. And at this stage, my lord, I will ask for protection because it is my time to continue with the cross-examination. My learned friend had his time, and he did not. What he's saying right now, he ought to have said it during his time when he was cross-examining this witness. And I cannot, with due respect, my lord, be told that it's a futile exercise for me to cross-examine this witness. As the court pleases, my lord, those are my submissions.
So, what actually then came out of court today in terms of this ongoing cross-examination of Mr. Musia?
Well, I think, Bradan, it's safe to say that the defense is really doing its best in terms of trying to show the court that the treatment of the crime scene in terms of the collection of evidence and how it was stored is questionable. They are going to a lot of detail with Musia in terms of how he collected evidence, what type of evidence he collected. Yesterday, Mshololo actually saying that there's a possibility that evidence was planted, but today she was questioning him on the swabs that he took at the crime scene, starting with DNA and now moving to the to gunshot residue. She put it to Musia whether at all he had taken any gunshot residue swabs from those who were in the house and present at the time of the murder. He conceded and said that he didn't. And Mshololo then asked, but why wouldn't you do that? Because that kind of information would then be able to assist the court and actually rule out anyone in the house as being a possible suspect and someone who could have actually fired the shot. Let's take a listen.
Those people who had been present during the shooting incident were the people who could have given you the correct information as to where the deceased was shot compared to Colonel Love.
Ene hopola hore batho ba e banne ba le teng ka nako ya ketsahalo ke bona ne ba ka o fa he mohlala le lesedi le batsi ka hore mofu ha thungwa ona le ho kae hantlentle hona le Colonel Ndlovu hobane yena ona le siko fihletse ho sontso ho etsahetse
ke a dumela empa se ke hlalositse hore dintlha tse ke di tholang ho le ponesa le teng ketsahalong eo ke dule hodima tsona ke sa boneng bohlokwa ba hore ke tle ke botse di victim hore ho etsaetse eng.
I agree with you, but as I already alluded to the fact that I rely on the information that will be relayed to me by my colleague, which is one of the officers who would have arrived first at the scene of crime.
Ngiyavuma ke ukuthi ke bona ke ibona ke bezomnikeza ke iqiniso noma bezomtshela ke iqiniso kunaye uBrigadier Ndlovu kodwa ke bese ngichazile ngaphambilini ngathi ke mina ke uma ngifika ngilandela ke lokho engitshela iphoyisa elifike kuqala kunami.
So the spot that was showed to you by Colonel Ndlovu as the spot where the deceased was when he was shot is the spot that you were directed by someone who was not present when the incident took place.
Well, that cross-examination set to continue, Slindelo, when the trial resumes on Monday after it was postponed, adjourned a little bit earlier than usual today. The main reasons, just remind us?
Yeah, so it seems during cross-examination, Advocate Shololo picked up that it seemed that Mosia's answers were beginning to be quite incoherent. She then asked him, Mr. Mosia, are you okay? And he then responded to say that he was tired. We then took a short adjournment. Counsel then consulted with each other and Mosia, and a decision was made that I think it would be better to rather adjourn early, allow Mosia to go home, because he then submitted that he had taken some medication this morning that was having some adverse effects on him. So in the interest of justice and to ensure that Mosia is, in a good position to be able to continue with cross-examination, the judge then decided to adjourn earlier than usual, and we will resume then on Monday. But before that, DEFO has requested a meeting in chambers with the judge as well as counsel. We don't know why, but it may be pertaining, of course, to him filing papers with regards to a trial within a trial. But if Mosia then isn't well enough to continue on Monday, we are expecting that we will start with a new witness as well.
Okay, Slindelo, before I let you go, I mean, this trial grabbing the country's imagination. You can see by how it's trending, for example, on social media, the different sites and people following it live here on eNCA television channel, on DSTV channel 403. In court, outside court, what kind of interest is there? What have you picked up? I mean, you've been there since the beginning. What can you share now with our viewers about how this trial is being followed in court?
I think for many of us who are inside court, it is quite interesting to see the interactions between the defense as well as the accused when they're consulting. It's interesting to see the different strategies that are being used by the different defense counsel, DEFO, as well as Shololo. What I found quite interesting, though, is that outside courts, I think I was expecting, Bradan, to find fans, possibly those who have been following the case, those who really loved Senzo Meyiwa to be outside court, try maybe supporting the family. But it's very quiet. It's business as usual, really. I think many people are following the trial in terms of us broadcasting it live and online. But inside court, of course, because of COVID-19, there's still strict protocols in place in terms of ensuring that there's social distancing. But it's really, for me, what's quite interesting is that outside court, it's quite quiet. But maybe we'll see a lot more activity when this trial comes to its finality. And also the Meyiwa family is also not in court anymore. They're watching these developments from home as well. And that's because of just how this case is progressing quite slowly.
Yeah, and maybe the situation, as you correctly say, Slindelo, into the future might change, specifically when maybe some key witnesses appear to give evidence there in the coming weeks and months. Thank you very much for this update, Slindelo Masikane, from inside the Pretoria High Court. Okay,